Hello everyone, it's me, it's Dreamer. I hope you're doing well today. In today's video, we are going to be addressing a topic that is becoming, I guess, more important. There's more attention around it in recent weeks, and that is equipment. Now, today's video is going to be broken down into 4 sections. I will go through those in a second. And there's going to be one overarching question, which is kind of like the fundamental reason why I made this video. So the 4 sections, the first one is like a housekeeping topic. It's kind of for those unfamiliar with what equipment is. It may be that you're new to the game or you just don't really understand the severity of it. So the first topic is why and where is it important and what does it provide to us as a player? The second one is what are the current players' thoughts on equipment? That's not mine, by the way. That's feedback that I've gathered, and I'll come on to how I did that. The third and the fourth topic is my feedback mixed with my proposal for the new revamped or shaped equipment system that I hope for the developers to see. I've spoken about the idea of proposing something, and effectively this is what it is. So I mentioned an overarching question, and we'll kind of revisit that question as we go. So let's set the scene with what that question is. So this is something that, like I said, I've been asking myself over the last couple of weeks, given equipment impacts my favorite game mode in this game, which is AFK stages. And that question is equipment in need of a change? And if it is, what does that change look like based on not just my feedback, but players' feedback? So you may be thinking, well, why am I interested in this? Yes, he may enjoy AFK stages, but why? And the answer is, over the last 2 phases, I've personally seen a sharp rise in the number of comments, questions, posts in Discord, on Reddit, on X. There's been mentions of it in like the fireside chats that they've had. You know, things like, what equipment should I be picking? Equipment costs too much. Equipment is too powerful. I'm punished for picking the wrong item out of my box. It's only important on select kind of classes like a rogue or a support. It's broken, it's confusing, it's in need of a change. And you're starting to see creators like Puzzle did a video on it yesterday, for example. And it's things like this that are bringing more light onto it. And you can feel that there is probably a need of change in the air, and that's why I wanted to investigate further. Okay, as I mentioned, section 1 is a housekeeping section. Effectively, we will be looking at the where and the why is equipment important. So starting with the where, it's important in AFK stages, Seasonal Tower, and Primal Lord. Now, Dream Realm and PvP aren't affected as of recording this video. I can't speak for the future. But yes, that's effectively the where. Now, the why. The why can also be kind of explained as what does it provide. Now, in AFK Journey, when we're in season, we have something called seasonal level. And the player base often correlates increase in power with increased seasonal level. But in reality, what do you get when you increase your level? You get stats. Now, equipment also provides stats. So it provides attack, attack speed, crit, HP, physical, magical, or range defense, crit resist, vitality, and haste. There are 6 different pieces for the 6 different classes. That's 36 individual items that are craftable. Some of them will have different combinations of the stats that we just mentioned. The ones that you need to look out for are the ones with attack on. They are the most meaningful. The game does a horrendous job at telling you that. But our heroes often, except maybe 1 or 2, scale off attack. There are exceptions, but we're just looking at attack for today. Now, I want to show you an example of the Vampiric Vine herself, Saida. On the screen, I've got her ultimate ability. I've also got player A and player B. Now, player A used their equipment chests that they got from basically defeating AFK stages and selecting rogue equipment differently from the other player. And what you'll see here is that player B, even at the same season level, has a higher attack, effectively damage output on their Saida than the other player. And that's because of equipment. And you may think that that value is small enough to be inconsequential. Saida's ultimate is 600% of her attack. Even this tiny amount snowballs and causes you a lot of problems if you don't have it. There are so many AFK stages that they are putting out to us that are 0 or 1 or 2 second clears. If you don't have the right equipment strategy, you effectively, the terminology is bricked. You cannot progress. I think this community puts a lot of focus on seasonal level, which is correct, it's right, and it has a huge impact. But often equipment is overlooked into just how much of an additional impact it has. And that is partly because players are potentially taking the wrong items. Now, something that we have probably all come to know from playing games like your World of Warcrafts or any MMO for that matter of fact, is that level of your items is king. However, taking a 150 item level increase on your boots for a rogue over a 10 item level increase on its weapon, the 10 item level increase on the weapon is the correct choice. And you'll be sat there potentially as an average player going, what? How is that even a thing? And unfortunately, it is. But once again, it's not taught to you, it's not known. And your common sense would say the 150 item levels is more important, but unfortunately it's not. So now we've looked at the examples, now we've kind of explained the where, the why, and what it provides. I want to go into the real meat of the video, which is sections 2, 3, and 4. So come with me on the journey. Probably going to shoot myself in the foot here, but I think this is the most important and honestly most interesting section of the video. This is player feedback on how the community feels about equipment, and it was really eye-opening and interesting to gather this. Now, this data was gathered during Season 5, Phase 2. I want to be completely transparent in how I collected this data because I don't want people to say it's bias or it's whatever, right? I just want to be clear. So how did I collect the data? I selected 50 of my 100 friends through a randomizer. I put all 100 in there. 50 of them came out. I asked 50 of them for their input. In addition to that, I asked World Chats 1, 2, and 31. I also asked my district chat for basically the same question, which was their thoughts on equipment, ideally summarized in 3 to 5 words. I didn't state that it had to be negative nor positive. Players asked me, do you want negative, positive? I said it's up to them. I'm trying not to lead them down a pathway for their feedback. Now, I initially expected to get 100 pieces of feedback, so 50 from my friends and then 50 from randoms, and that would combine for 100. I got over 300 people providing me feedback, which, once again, it doesn't sound like a crazy amount, but I wasn't expecting, like I said, I was expecting 100. I got 307 responses to be exact. That's players both old and new to the game that were contributing their views on this topic. A topic, like I mentioned at the start, seemingly growing attention in this community in recent weeks. Now, what did I do with that data? I collected all of the feedback. I then calculated the top 10 used words or phrases, and I've created a bubble map, which will appear. The biggest bubble was the most mentioned. Once again, for transparency purposes, have put the numbers that appeared. You'll see that there are 10 phrases that I've selected. These were the top 10. There were 22 unique phrases provided. I just wanted to take a meaningful number, which was 10 in my head. Now, there were more than 22, but I've basically applied some common sense, or some commonality, I should say. I condensed some of the single phrase. Effectively, I condensed some of them into a single phrase. So I'm going to give you 3 examples. One of them was like, if a player said expensive and another player said it costs too much, I just class that as expensive. Someone that says confusing and someone that says unclear, it was confusing. And the last one, as an example, was it's complicated, it's tricky, it's easy if you know it. I've condensed into knowledge because effectively they all spanned and spend into knowledge. Now, as you can see from the bubble map, the top 10 were as followed. It was broken, and I don't think this is in the order that they actually came in. I've just got them on my screen here. But it was the 10 were broken, impactful, expensive, boring, stressful, knowledge, bloated, irrelevant, min-max, luck. Now, I could expand on each and every single one of these, but I'm not going to because that's a lot of time. But what I did do is once I calculated the top 10, I went back to effectively a select group of individuals and said, could I have further reasoning to understand why you selected this or why you said this, to try and give us some thoughts to talk through. So I want to delve into 5 of them, and I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail because I don't want this to be like hours long, and I don't think it needs to be either. So expensive is quite clear. It costs too much gold. There was never any feedback about the crafting stones themselves. It was always a focus on gold. Now, I'm going to use my own account as an example here. Like I was looking at this today. At the moment, for me to craft a piece of equipment costs 500,000 gold. Now, there's 36 unique pieces of equipment. So 6 classes, 6 pieces. If I wanted to craft a full set of equipment, that's 18 million gold. And to put it into perspective, I've been playing the game since the middle of Season 3. I have just shy of 200 million gold. So that would be 11 full sets. So that would be effectively from levels 800 to 900. I would nearly be bankrupt. Now, obviously, you shouldn't be crafting every 10 levels, but that's not taught to you as a player. And in addition to that, if you're a new player to this game, you won't have that much gold. And yes, players that have played this game since the start, you have an abundance of gold. Congratulations to you. But you are probably the outlier, not the normality. So you need to look at this from a new player's perspective to understand if this system is broken or not. And that plays into the next one, which is irrelevant. And I wanted to pick out irrelevant because it was really interesting to see this appear in the top 10. There is a large amount of this community player base that thinks equipment is just irrelevant. Like they don't see the value, they don't see the impact, they just don't care. And the players that I investigated this with were like, well, I craft once every like 50 levels. I don't really care about my AFK stage progress. There's someone else in my district that unlocks the rewards, and I'm not pushing for high enough AFK stages. So what that says to me is that the portion of the player base that doesn't care about AFK stages don't care. And that's fine. Like, it's probably not a system that's aimed towards them. Could be, and there is a faction or a fiction, a section of that irrelevant audience that probably think it's boring, but didn't mention boring. And yeah, I'm just interested, I was really interested to hear them voice this notion of, well, I just don't care. Now, the flip to that is the players that said impactful, because there is a portion of the player base that sees equipment as impactful as season levels. And I mentioned it in section 1, my housekeeping section, of the importance that it can have, and even the tiniest of mistake in the way that you build your equipment strategy in terms of the items that you select from your boxes can have a huge knock-on effect in how you do in AFK stages. So your players that care about pushing in AFK stages, you can wind up severely punished for taking the wrong item. And unfortunately, due to the bloat, and once again, one of the things were bloated, due to the bloat in the system, There's so many items and options and classes that you can go for that if you do pick the wrong one, you are punished. Like, let's say you take a rogue weapon when in reality you should have taken a warrior helm. You know it. Like, you'll know it the next time you get to an AFK stage. Now, the next point ties nicely, which is knowledge. Knowledge was a really interesting one to me because it goes for both the positive and the negative. Now, knowledge, there were people out there that said, well, I know what to do. I know that I shouldn't be crafting I should be crafting once every 30 levels. I should be focusing on attack pieces, but they still feel that they get it wrong. And when I asked them why, their responses were, well, I've picked the right rogue equipment, but my support items are now lacking, and I'm effectively, all intents and purposes, screwed in terms of support equipment until I catch up on season level with it. And yeah, there is a good portion of knowledge in the player base, but then there was one new player who I spoke to who was like, surely me taking, 100 item level increase on my boots is better than a 10 item level increase on my weapon. And the honest answer is, unless it's a warrior, no. Because attack is more meaningful than HP 99% of the time, especially for like a rogue. And that's not communicated anywhere. That's not guided. That's not really mentioned. So there is a distinct lack of knowledge. And even when there is a critical value of knowledge, like when there's a good sum of knowledge on a player, they still feel like they have so much to know and learn. So to me, that was quite interesting. And the last one, which was our biggest, was the word broken. Now, honestly, this likely could have shared commonality with so many other points that we've gathered and spoken about. But it was so often mentioned alongside other phrases that it clearly stood out in players' minds as something they felt critical to voice. Like it was always broken and impactful, or broken and expensive, or broken and boring. So it always circled back nicely to another phrase, but fundamentally each player was accepting that the system that they were interacting with was broken and in need of a change. So if it is in need of a change, what does that change look like? And that would be section 4. But I first want to pause and just give you my own thoughts, which effectively is section 3, on my view of equipment, both based on equipment itself, but also the feedback that we have received. So firstly, the feedback I think is really simple to summarize. There is a clear frustration in the community, both from players that interact with equipment, but also that don't. Like the players that don't interact with equipment just were like, I don't care. Like they're like, I have no interest. This system is boring. Like I don't care. It's not meaningful. It doesn't feel important to my character. I have no identity with the system. And then the players that do were like, I'm really frustrated because I thought I picked the right items during my push in AFK stages, and I've got to an AFK stage and I can't do it. But someone else can who has worse ascension than I do, and it's because I didn't take this one piece along my way, and I've got no way to fix it, and yeah, it's just not fun. So you can tell there's clear frustration from both sides that do and don't interact with equipment on a daily basis. Now, my thoughts, I normally say that I'm on the fence. that tends to be where I sit happily. I probably am off the fence on this one. I am on the side that I think this system is broken and it probably needs a revamp. It's been in the game for a long, long time, and it's never really had too much love. I think that there is too much bloat. Obviously, one of the words that we had was bloated. I really think that there's obviously 6 classes and 6 pieces. There's 36 items. It just feels too many. And it feels like if you are doing well on one class, you're behind on another. And what I mean by that is, in phase 2, you could be doing really well on rogue and support equipment. You could have perfected your strategy for those. but you could forget warrior, like I did, and your Baleren is tiny. And as a result, Baleren suddenly is needed for a stage, as is his damage, and you time out. And yes, that's on me, that's down to my choices, but I've got no way of correcting that. And as other heroes come into the game, and even in other phases of the game, other classes become important. So in phase 1 of season 5, support and rogue were the main two, and Baleren rarely showed up. Now in phase 2, it's rogue, support, and warrior all have an equal value, because Baleren is showing up a huge amount. And in phase 3, we are expecting Tassie to appear. So suddenly you've got mage, warrior, support, and rogue that you now need to strategize for. So in a world where you get 3 of them correct and you go to the stage that needs the 4th, congratulations, you can't do it. But the guy that was bricked because he didn't take the warrior gear, but he took the mage gear, can now do this one. There's just no, I used the word a minute ago, commonality. There's no, it just doesn't feel like there's an intelligence in the system. It's not a meaningful choice when the choice is always the wrong one. And that is my fundamental issue with this foundational platform. If the platform isn't rewarding at its core, and it just feels like you are picking the best of a bad choice, that isn't good. That doesn't fill me with good. And it's the same when I'm crafting these really not meaningful pieces and I'm paying an arm and a leg to craft them. So yeah, my thoughts, I share a lot of thoughts with the feedback that I gathered. I'm not going to dwell too much deeper on them. I'd like to go into my section 4, my proposal. I said that section 2 was the most interesting. I hope that you probably find this next section the most interesting, but I'll leave you to be the judge. All right. Section 4. Before we delve into section 4 in its entirety, at the beginning of this whole thing, we asked ourselves what we called an overarching question. And that question was, is equipment in need of a change? And if it is, what does that change look like based on player feedback? Now, from the 307 players that I had the pleasure of speaking to, and that I thank again from the bottom of my heart for providing me the feedback, it does look like it needs a change. Now, based on that feedback, I have created a system that I believe brings it back to a simple state. And from what I've gathered, I think simplicity is key to progression in the future. This is my proposal. I'm going to send this through support, so hopefully a developer sees this, either naturally or via that avenue. And before I continue, I encourage people to comment, provide feedback, provide your own ideas, put them below in the comments. This is just mine. You may not like it, you may absolutely hate it. And I completely get that, I understand it. But this is just mine, and here I go. So, I believe fundamentally we should scrap class equipment. We should have Merlin, or our player character, equipment. Meaning, the equipment we have on our player character would impact every hero. It would impact our entire team as a whole. So in my idea, we go from 6 classes having 6 individual pieces, so that 36 number, down to 9. So we automatically have a 4th of the equipment to manage, craft, and create and juggle and pick from. The 9 pieces would be a weapon, a headpiece, a chest piece, legs, boots, a ring, a trinket, gloves, and a cloak. I think that's 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 9. There you go. Each of these items would provide similar stats to what we have now, but they would be broken into 4 groups. So weapon and gloves would be attack and attack speed. The head and the boots would be HP and crit resist. The chest and the legs would be your physical, magical, and ranged defense items. And your cloak, trinket, and ring would be your other stats. So your haste, your crits, and your vitalities. The character sheet would look something not too dissimilar from like an MMO, like your World of Warcrafts, like I mentioned earlier. Now, to me, I said that simplicity is key. Instantly eliminating 27 items brings it slightly more simple. Eliminating the need to focus your efforts on 6 different classes into one gives you that simplicity. I mentioned earlier in section 3 that you feel punished if you perfect your strategy for rogue and support, but you miss warrior. And let's say suddenly mage emerges into the meta through Tassie, you're having to juggle 4 classes when we know that attack value items are the best. There tends to be 3, sometimes 4 attack value items for each class. Suddenly you're looking at 12 pieces. That's instantly more than the 9 that I'm suggesting, and only 2 of the 9 that I'm suggesting have attack on. Now, there are a lot of side notes to this system. It's not just as simple as me saying, that's all folks, thank you very much, have a wonderful day. There are many needed improvements into the UI element of this game to help players. Now, I want to state right now that I think it should remain simply in the game modes that it is in. I don't want it introduced in Dream Realm or PvP. I don't like those game modes. I am an AFK stage player. I'm fine with how it is. I'm not asking for equipment to suddenly be game-wide. I just want it so that it's simpler for a player that enjoys AFK stages. Now, I think that the game modes that equipment affect should be clearer. Now, I will show you what I mean by that. I think that when you go into the equipment screen, underneath the power icon in the top left, there should be a list of the game modes that it affects. I don't think you should need to go into each individual game mode to understand, does this affect this, does it not? So that's one piece. The second one is, I think we should be scrapping the season average resonance level. I think it should be determined by your highest character season level. So if you are someone that pushes one character ahead, I think that should be rewarded, not punished. I think that within the information tab, we would recommend, or the game AFK Journey Lilith, you guys should be recommending or writing a guide by the community and the developers for each new season into the items that you suggest. So for example, player, you should be looking to upgrade your weapon first, then your gloves, then this, then this. Like, you should be explaining to the player more openly a suggested route, because right now that knowledge is lacking. Now, within each piece of equipment right now, when you go into them, you can see the stats that they provide, but when you click on that stat, it doesn't do anything. Like I'll show you here, it's not doing anything. If you were able to click on that stat, similar to how you can when you're inside a hero screen, and it explained to you what the stat does, once again, it instantly gives more knowledge to the player to make an informed decision. If they don't know what attack does and they don't know what this does, like, how are you supposed to know what item to craft as a new player? Now, the boxes that we open saying this, we should also be able to see the stats that they're going to provide. Like, it shouldn't be a mystery to us what we're effectively rewarding ourselves with. This feels like I'm complaining. I'm really not. I'm trying to just get across that these are fundamentally important things that we should have. The next one is probably the most critical, and it's arguably one of the most bizarre things that we don't have. If I proxy another player, I should be able to see their equipment. And if you implemented a system that had purely Merlin-based equipment, if you proxied a player, you should be able to click into like their Merlin and see what item levels their equipment's at. Similar to how like an inspect function works in World of Warcraft or another MMORPG, you should be able to see what they have selected and what they've crafted. Like right now, I can go and proxy a friend and I can see their hero levels. I can see their charms. I can see their ascension of their heroes. I can see everything, but I can't see their equipment. And that is something that needs to be amended. Now, being creative, there are 3 creative changes that I think you could do. One of them is extremely fun. One of them, I'm surprised hasn't been done yet. you could attach cosmetics, like season-based cosmetics, to the equipment that you're giving to Merlin. So in my example, the 9 pieces could be themed, we're going to take Season 5 here, around Halia. You could have like a Perseus or a Halia soldier style armor that progressively looks more and more badass as you're going through the armor tiers throughout the season. So you could start at, you know, equipment level, well, effectively like 300 or whatever it is that we start at, I can't remember now. And as you go up and up and up and up and up, all the way to the end of the season, by the end of the season, you look insanely cool, but you also have the option to hide it. And like me on the screen, you could use your own cosmetics. So that's something to keep in mind if you're going to continue down this seasonal equipment route. The other two are just simple things. One of them is a craft all button. It's something that people are crying out for. And the other one is, I don't know why you would want this, but you could add forge stones or equipment boxes to the season store. So you could add effectively ways for players to buy more equipment if they wanted it through season tickets. It's another way to drain resources from the player base for something that they may not need, but it's an option for them. Now, I mentioned, and that's my idea, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I mentioned my idea. I wanted to try and understand, does it solve the problem? And the answer is maybe, maybe not. Like, I have no clue until it would be implemented or if it was ever even looked at. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to take those 10 phrases and quickly look at each and every single one of them to see if I can tick the box. So, expensive. You're crafting 9 pieces instead of 36. That's significantly less. So I think I get a tick there. Impactful. It remains impactful. You're still having the same impact, but you're no longer punished for juggling 3 or 4 classes correctly. You're just, you know, let's say we still need those attack pieces at the highest levels. You've got 2 items to focus on instead of potentially 12. So I think I get a tick there. Knowledge, through the system itself and also the UI improvements that I'm effectively suggesting, I think the knowledge would be improved for the general player. I think you could, like I said, you could have a community member, be it like a puzzle or a Zebo, kind of explain and create a guide that could just be put into the information tab. Cool. Tick. Next up is irrelevant. I don't think I'm going to get a tick here. I think this might be one of the 10 that I fall down on. If you play AFK stages and you think equipment is relevant, I think you have a severe lack of knowledge into just how impactful, playing nicely into our last 2 words, equipment can be. And I don't think this change fundamentally fixes that. It would through some of the other points like the guides and stuff like that. But most of the time when I spoke to people and they said irrelevant, it was because they just don't interact with the game modes that it ties to, like AFK stages. So would simplifying equipment bring them back into AFK stages? I don't think so. It may be that they've had a bad experience in the past where they've kind of selected the wrong equipment. They've gone to a certain stage and they can't do it. Like there was an individual on Reddit who was stuck. They voiced that they were just done with AFK stages because they were at the same season level as their friend, the same ascension, the same everything, but they couldn't do it. And when you looked into it, it was equipment. But they didn't know anything about it. They didn't really understand that, and they just picked the wrong pieces of equipment from their boxes because they went high item level equals the right pick. So would changing the system make it less irrelevant? Maybe. I think I can give myself a pass. I don't think I can give myself like a 100% amazing red star tick kind of thing, but I do think it's close. Now, reeling off the last few, like the boring one, it being tied to your character would hopefully solve that element. It brings a little bit more of a feel and a fun factor to it when you can tie it directly to your character. The luck element would be gone. Equipment boxes wouldn't be, oh, I've opened 3 pair of the same boots. Now I've got 35 other pieces that I need to open or I need to craft. You could potentially still open 3 pairs of the same boots, but you'd only have 8 pieces to look at. the min-max element would be honed downward. You know, suddenly you're not, like I said in the impact piece, you're not juggling multiple classes, which would then lead to stress being eliminated and the bloat being removed. So I think I can give myself a tick on all of those. But obviously the biggest one was broken. And can I tick myself on that? I clearly would say that I could. It's my idea. I think it's a positive change. But I will leave it to you to say whether I can give myself a tick against the broken mark. Now, I'm always a fan of arguing against myself. A player who will remain anonymous told me that they like the current system because it allows them to get an advantage on a player who has a better account than them, but less knowledge of what equipment is good. Meaning, you know, their S+ Baoren built correctly is a monster, but the Wales P4 Crown Baoren with the wrong equipment strategy is doing awfully. And effectively he can outprogress or at least stay equal to someone significantly higher than him. And yes, while I think that's cool, I think that once again, as we have more and more hero diversity come into the game and more classes have relevance in AFK stages, like let's say they release a meta-defining mage hero that then starts to play rock, paper, scissors with the current formations that we have, and it's permanently 4 classes, suddenly you're juggling, like I said, 12 pieces. In my suggestion, you're only juggling 2. And yeah, I think for that one example that player gave me, I think you have to give that up for the rest of the good that comes with the idea. Now, that effectively is everything. I'm going to end it here and get to work on editing all of this for you beautiful people. But let me know your thoughts. Like I said at the start of this section, I encourage you, share your feedback, share your ideas, your comments below. I really hope you enjoyed this. It will seem quite rambly. And just a note, I'll be doing a phase 3 in-depth equipment guide similar to my phase 2 one, but with a bit more detail, given the emergence once again and importance of equipment. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, as always, have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. A selfish plug from myself. If you ever do make a purchase in this game in terms of like dragon crystals via loot bar, I have an affiliate link. It's in the description. It would mean the world to me if you did use it. If you're using someone else's already, no problems. But if you don't use an affiliate link, feel free to use mine. I'd love it. But yeah, overall, like I said, I think equipment needs a change. Is my idea the change that it needs? Probably not. But it's important that we as players voice our feedback. And to the 307 individuals that gave me theirs, thank you very much for helping me make this video possible. And yeah, all the best to everybody with their lucky flips. See you later.